Hi, and welcome to the Vet Story Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about the business side of veterinary medicine. You know, the stuff they didn't teach you in school. We focus on what really moves the needle, from metrics, leadership, culture, and the decisions that makes running a practice easier. I'm your host, Reese Generelli. I am a multi-practice site owner and the founder of Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. My purpose is simple: to help practice owners move from the business operator category to the business owners category. And with that, let's get started. We are back with another episode of the Vet Story Podcast. I'm joined with the Vaisman, Josh Vaisman. How you doing, Josh?
When I'm referred to as the wise man, I think to myself, okay, I got the receding hairline down, but I don't have enough white yet. It's like the beard has got white in it, but I need more white up here, and then maybe I'll look like a wise man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the hair to begin with.
Fair.
I mean, if we want to swap, I'll take it.
Fair. Well, you look good. You look good. I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me, Reese.
No, you know, if anyone should be grateful, it's definitely me. You are a pioneer in our industry. For those who don't know, Josh is the Mr. Positive in our industry. So if you don't know who he is, get out of that rock, because dead set, you need to know who this guy is. Josh is with me today because he challenged me to a duel. But before we do that, Josh, tell the audience, for those who don't know you, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I've been in the veterinary space since the late 90s, which is hard to imagine at this point in time, more than half of my life. Done just about every role except being a doctor, including hospital ownership. So I was the managing partner in a couple small animal practices. And then about 8 years ago, so like late 2017, early 2018, I started an organization called Flourish Veterinary Consulting. And I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you, Reese, the reason that I started this organization is because I was a shitty leader. And I realized way too late that I was bad at it, despite all the best intentions in the world and caring a lot about the people that I worked with, worked alongside, who worked for me, all those kinds of things. I did a very poor job at creating a workplace in which they felt at their best and could do their best. And it sort of made me realize that that's probably not as much a flaw of me as a flaw of how we get into leadership positions in the veterinary space. Most of us stumble into it like I did, and very, very few of us get any real like quality education, guidance, and mentorship on how to do well at what I think of as peopling. And that's what leadership really is, right? Leadership is not about so much getting people to do things. It's about getting people to be something, to be the best version of themselves, creating a space where they can do that. I didn't do that well. So I started Flourish to help others not go through the pain and suffering that I went through. Flourish is essentially an organization that we like to say takes the science of human thriving, translates it, and makes it usable so that leaders and veterinary organizations can create workplaces in which the people of VetMed thrive. So that's what I do now.
So it sounds like that you've rehearsed that.
I mean, it's like I get asked often what we do, and yeah, that's the spiel. But that, I mean, honestly, it comes from the heart.
No,
it really is why I do what I do and how I do it.
It's funny, you said that, you know, once upon a time, you weren't that positive leader, and you said you started Flourish because you didn't want people to go through the same thing that your people went through with you.
I think of, you know, we do a lot of work with veterinary leaders, so practice managers, hospital owners, medical directors, CEOs, regional directors, like all those kinds of folks. And we do a lot of work with veterinary teams, so people working on the floor in the practice, associate veterinarians, folks who report up to these high-level leaders within corporate settings, on the industry side, all that kind of stuff. And originally, my drive for starting this organization was to focus on the leaders themselves. I really hit the darkest point in my life because I was bad at leadership. And the pain that I felt, there was a point in time where I thought I was going to leave veterinary medicine, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't feel as if I belonged. I felt like I couldn't be good in this profession. And that was really heartbreaking for me because it means a lot to me, and the people in this profession mean a lot. I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. I know how lonely and isolating leadership can be, especially when you feel like you're struggling at it. And so I wanted to help other leaders be better at what they want to be. Because the truth is, Reese, I think you'll agree with me on this. You've also met a lot of people in leadership positions in veterinary medicine. There are some bad leaders, but there are very, very, very few people who are leaders and bad people. Good human beings with good intentions who just don't know how to deliver on those intentions. So I wanted to help them bridge that gap. But as I started to do this work, I realized, really what this is about is, quote, the people of vet med. Because when we have veterinary organizations that have high quality leaders that lead in a positive way, that create this kind of workspace, everybody benefits. And that's what the research actually shows. We know that positive leaders don't just create workplaces in which the people who work for them are more engaged, find their work more fulfilling. We also know that when leaders lead in this way, their well-being improves, that they actually do and feel better.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, the listening to I've seen you speak at some conferences and on the floor at IDEX at WVC 2023, if I remember that correctly. I remember walking past and I'm like, oh, there's Josh, and it was let me hear what this guy has to say. Man, the things that you were saying hadn't scratched the surface of yet. And I thought I need to learn more. So like you, we like to develop ourselves, and a lot of books we have to read and listen to a lot of podcasts that you've done. It's definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things, and obviously different ways of thinking. And I think I can be the first person to say this out loud, is that I'm not that Mr. Positive myself. I'm, I guess, Mr. Practical. I like to make sure that while we can have a positive environment, I'm not that positive aura that goes around as a leader, but I'm cognizant of how I conduct myself, how I speak, and how I lead my team and people. But what you do is I cannot do what you do. I just simply can't do that every day. I don't have that in my being.
I appreciate you saying that. I think that's a moment of vulnerability that I have a lot of respect for. Maybe it would be helpful for a moment to talk about the word positive and what we mean in this context.
Sure, that's right.
Sometimes I worry that when we think of the word positive in the context of leadership, that what we hear is like happy, inspiring, bubbly, charismatic, like all these. And I see you nodding. What I mean by positive is that positive leaders are willing to admit not just their strengths, but their flaws and weaknesses. They're willing to enter into leadership with an open mind and an invitation for alternative perspectives. Positive leaders look at the human beings in their stead, not as an ends to a mean, but as ends in themselves and as conduits to meaningful impact and outcomes. And so they convey to those people that, Reese, you matter as a human being, and here's why. And the work that you do matters, and here's why. Like, they show those things, right? Positive leaders are really good at identifying strengths and aspirations, what I refer to as the magic in other people, helping them see that magic so they reflect that magic, and helping them use that magic to accomplish meaningful things. So they get to know them. They get to know, Reese, you've said in this conversation that you feel like you've only scratched the surface of the kinds of things I'm talking about, which to me implies that you're interested in learning more. Positive leaders show people that they have their best interest in mind, that you're part of a community here, and that you matter to me in meaningful ways. And positive leaders approach performance conversations and shortcomings and flaws in others, not as an opportunity to condescend or tear apart, but as an opportunity to coach and build up, right? Those are all positive leadership practices. None of those are about always saying nice things. None of those are about always showing up as the happy-go-lucky person, because a positive leadership requires humanity. And the reality of being a human being is you're going to have great days, and you're going to have shitty days, and you're going to have every kind of day in between. And you have to be able to still deal with people in productive ways, despite those, whatever productive means on that given day, so that you can show them that they have the space to do the same. That's what positive leadership is. Now, when you hear that, does that change your perspective on how you view your own leadership?
I'm pausing, not for dramatic effect, and I'm trying to get the words out. Yes, it does change my perspective because, to me, as you say, the connotation of positive is always happy. I'm always positive. When I say I'm more practical, I have Okay, here we go. I can be empathetic. I can be compassionate, but it's more to me. It's like I get everyone has their own issues and stories in life. I understand that, and this is the resources I can give you. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make you drink. So at some point, as a leader and a business owner, I might say, is that at what point is there a cutoff? I don't want to be harsh when I say that, but there has to be some growth to this person.
100%.
There has to
Yeah.
be some willingness to wanting to be better as well. I'm willing to help someone, give them resources, but I need something back in return.
Yes.
And that's not productivity. That is development. If you can develop, that's a byproduct of productivity. Am I wrong? Tell
No,
me.
I don't think you are. This is a really great insight that you're bringing up. I think this is incredibly important. Sometimes in viewing positive leadership as only positive traits, those only happy-go-lucky, high-end charismatic traits, we accidentally conflate positive leadership with the absence of accountability. Actually, positive leadership requires accountability. For example, if I asked any random member of one of your teams, if I asked them questions like this, how would they respond? When I make a mistake, I know I can talk to Reese about that mistake, and he's not going to judge me personally. How would they respond to that if I asked them that?
I'd like to think that they're going to tell you it's 100% correct. Because my next question is, what could we have done differently?
Yeah, that's great. So if I ask them this question then, Reese is interested and supportive of my professional success. Would they agree with that?
Then my lunch and learns are a waste of time.
So you feel like they would agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
If I ask them this question, do you feel that Reese has your best interests in mind in the decisions he makes in this practice?
Once again, I hope they say, yeah, I do, because I want them to be better versions. In fact, when we talk about, train your team to eventually leave you, but keep them with culture, that's something that we want to achieve. I am absolutely supportive. I'm not just saying this because of the podcast, but I'm absolutely for anybody to learn from us. When I say us, the team, because I don't just deliver it myself, but from us as a team, to then go off and do something that they love. And if it means that they've just simply outgrown the practice, then fine. But as long as they've left a better versions of themselves, my job's done.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, one more. It's a two-parter.
All right.
I asked them this question. If you do something well here, Reese will recognize it. How would they respond to that?
I would say no. No, he does not.
Okay. So that's...
And I'm happy to explain.
Oh, please.
Yeah. I am not that person that will scream from the rooftops, oh my God, Amanda did this a fantastic job. Well done, Amanda.
Yeah.
I will say in private, hey, you've done a great job here. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I give that personal thing,
okay.
but not as a recognizable in front of the team praise, because I know that's not how some people want that validation.
Okay. If I asked a random member of your team, when was the last time Reese said thank you to you, what would they say?
I say thank you every day as a general thing. Thanks for today. If it's something specific, I do say thank you, but I will be the first person to tell you that I am not that person always to say thank you for doing your job. But if you went out of your way to do something, that is a thank you for doing this. Is different for me because I've grew up to, this is your job. You do your job. Again, I don't know if that's wrong or right, but to me, this is a job that we do. But if I've gone above and beyond my job, that warrants acknowledgement, in my opinion anyway. I've always wanted to have the approval of my father when I worked for him. I'm Italian. We never got that approval.
Can relate to that, by the way.
It was always, this is your job. Do your job. I get that. And I'll probably the same mentality that I would take to my team, like this is your job. But if it's outside the scope of your job description, I would say absolutely thank you. Have I missed them? Yeah, I probably missed a few thank yous here and there. But I hope that they acknowledge that it's not on purpose.
What, Reese, best guess, I know you're not a mind reader, but what percentage of your team do you think feels appreciated by you?
I'm going through the people in my head.
Yeah.
So for the people that who have been with me longer than a year, I would say a good 90% would say I appreciate them. And I'm being honest. Yeah. If I was to pick that 10% who think I don't, I can tell you I don't mind. They've already given me notice to leave.
Yeah.
And we're talking like I have two people who've given me a year notice. One has already gone, but the other one is leaving in August. And this is about, I guess, trust, relationship. Is that one has been with me for 8 years. She's like, hey, I'm going out to another city. I'm like, of course, I know that much I know. Now, even though we have a history, I can tell you that the personality has shifted as now not being a productive member of the team. Like I can see that already. She's checked out.
Okay.
That relationship is starting to weigh a little
Yeah.
bit, and I know that. And we're having some conversations as I speak to you today. Is like, hey, are you sure you still want to be here? Because I can see that you've checked out. Right. So, if you ask me about do I show this particular person appreciation, I mean, I have for the last 8 years until I've seen a shift in her personality of I'm leaving soon. So I've stepped back quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the last one then, which was technically the second part of what turned into a 3-part question. If I pulled a random member of your team aside and I asked them, the last time you fell short of an expectation here, you messed something up or missed something or didn't know how to do something right, do you feel that the feedback you got was productive and supportive? Like, do you feel like after that you felt prepared to do better next time? How would they respond?
Funny you should ask. We had a conversation yesterday about that with somebody. I did get an email or a message about it 2 hours ago, but I do like to go through the points of concerns, what we could have done differently. And I'm all about, as I kept saying to you before, is if this is not done correctly, say, what was the intended outcome here? Did we succeed? What could we have done differently? What support do you need from me in order to change this for the future? Like what support I can give you that is going to affect this change? Again, I didn't get much dialogue because for her, she likes to communicate after she's processed everything. So this is what the next step is. I don't know if that answers your question, but if I was to look at anyone else for that matter, I can use Kristen, who's been with me for also 8 years. There was a point where I didn't think she'd make outside of her probation period. And I was very honest about that with her. And she came back, I think 3 days later, it was over a weekend. She said, I hear you and you're right. What can I do? So 8 years later, here she still is as my left-hand person, because my wife's the right-hand person, but my left-hand person, right, as my operations manager.
That's great.
So, and every day we have this conversation about mentorship and training her because she still wants to be better. Now, is she awesome all the time? No. But am I? No. I have my flaws. So, and I am very well aware of my flaws, as my wife likes to point out. But, this is part of personal development in my view.
Yeah, I think that's great. What I'm hearing in this conversation is that generally speaking, based on the data that you have and that you're able to share, obviously your whole team's not here. I can't ask them privately, but based on what I'm hearing, generally speaking, you have a sense that your team feels like they can screw things up and know that being human and making human mistakes is not going to be their downfall. Your team generally knows that you hold them to a high expectation because you believe in their capability to reach those expectations. Your team knows that generally speaking, you have their best interests in mind in the decisions that you make. You at least consider their best interests when you make decisions in the business. Your team knows that, generally speaking, your team knows that they're appreciated by you. Your team is getting productive, coaching-oriented feedback when they're falling short of expectations, those standards that you hold them to. And the result of that is that generally you have pretty good longevity and retention. That, to me, Reese, that is the description of positive leadership. So based on what you're saying to me today, I would say you're probably, no one's perfect at this, but you're probably a better than average positive leader.
Hang on, let me get my wife here so that way you can tell her the same thing. Yeah.
But this is the point, is like these are evidence-based behaviors that we know correlate to the kinds of outcomes that we're after in veterinary medicine. When we say, like, I want to have a good team, I want to have a good culture, I want to have a high-performing practice, I want good, strong team dynamics, a good workplace environment, whatever terminology we use, those are all lagging indicators. Those are all outcomes. These are the antecedents to those outcomes. These are the behaviors that are most likely to encourage the response in the team that will lead to those outcomes. That's what positive leadership is about. It's about saying, okay, the literature tells us when we cultivate psychological safety at work and we combine that with high standards and high expectations because we have a belief in the potential of the people there. Those two things combined create high performance, resiliency, innovation, creativity, all of those outcomes. That's just one example. So what we're talking about in positive leadership are what are the behaviors that you can do routinely that are most likely to encourage those things to happen? It sounds like you're doing a lot of them.
I mean, I didn't look at it in that light. I thought I was just trying to create a safe environment for my team to mess up rather than it being positive. But I guess they're much the same. I just didn't think that was what I was trying to do, more about just being safe than positive.
Yeah. Maybe I should change it from the positive leadership framework to the productive leadership framework.
All right. But we have gone totally off course.
We have, sorry.
We have. But I want to go back. There was a comment or a post on LinkedIn that I chimed in on, and Josh challenged me to a duel with a leather glove and said, "Sir, I challenge." So here we are. And mind you, this is the second time that we've tried to record because this dummy, me, forgot to press record halfway through. So this is take 2. Josh, where do we want to begin, bud?
Sure. First of all, I'm going to push back on you immediately and say, I don't think I challenged you. I do like the image of me stepping up to you with a leather glove, though, and I may try that at the next conference that we're together. A colleague of ours, Becky Mosser, who's very, very active in veterinary technician advocacy and leadership. She had posted something on LinkedIn recently. The post started with a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I get it, very provocative statement. She said, it's something to the tune of, it's impossible to be a credentialed veterinary technician. And then she went on to list a lot of the reasons in support of this claim. You know, she talked about things like underutilization, that we work in practices where doctors don't really trust us or don't allow us to work to the top of our license. She talked about things like overwork and work schedules, high levels of expectation, the demand of professionalism in the face of all these stressors. She talked about things like the fact that there isn't title protection across the country, like all those kinds of things. And then she also, in that list, that what I think of as the checklist, mentioned that it's hard to make a living. Financially, a lot of credential technicians appear to be underpaid, at least relative to cost of living in their area. Now, as I recall it, Reese, and I'm going to obviously give you the opportunity to clarify and push back on me. I think that's how we have fruitful discourse. As I recall, you seem to hone in on the pay piece, and you asked some questions that, to me, honestly, they felt a bit leading. It felt like you were trying to say something, but you were trying to lead Becky into allowing you to say it. And so I piped in and asked you a few questions as well. It just stood out to me that if that whole list, you really honed in on the pay thing alone in isolation of all the other things. And so you said, hey, let's talk about this on the podcast. I thought that's awesome. At the very least, it can give us the opportunity to model to our community members that we can have disagreements and we can have productive conversations around those disagreements. That's actually how positive change happens.
Yeah,
so here we are. That's my sort of recap of it.
So the only reason why I picked that part out, because everything else I agreed with, but the word was fair. So what was fair? Fair compensation, right? And here's the actual thing. I don't disagree with any of those comments, but what is fair? Now, fair, I believe that they should be paid a phenomenal rate for what they do, for what they put up with. Where I had to step in and put my owner's hat on rather than consultant hat on was, at what point can a practice model sustain what they should be paid? Not what they are, but what they should be paid. Because the model is not sustainable to do that. Do we want to be paid, or do they want to be paid as much as dental hygienists or human nurses? Absolutely. I'm all for that. But the model doesn't support that wage bracket. It can't, because they're subsidized, heavily subsidized by private insurance. Now, if we had the same thing, if VetMed said that we would have a health benefit fund, dude, let's go. I'm not singling her out. Unfortunately, I had to. That was the post that I commented on. But the same, I would have the exact same outlook on any post that said we should be paid X amount. I don't disagree, but I have to ask the question: what's fair? Is it right? No, but is what's fair in our current climate? And I think I come to this as more of an education perspective rather than you're not allowed to have that kind of conversation. Education of I want you to understand, and maybe they do know, and I don't want to assume they don't care. And again, this is not specific or aimed at Becky, but I just wanted to make sure that the education piece was there. Do I agree? Yeah, I do agree. Can we sustain it? Can we support it? No, but here's why. Our model doesn't support it. And as a practice owner, I want to give it to you and I want to make sure we can give it to you, but I know that I can't. I can't get to that point. There's going to be a cap that as a private practice owner, we are going to reach. And that's the unfortunate reality. Until that cap is moved or lifted, or even maybe that technician becomes a owner, that's going to change that wage bracket. But as a technician, registered technician, there's only so much we can grow in terms of salary. That is where I was coming from. Does that make sense, Josh?
I think so. So there's two things that I feel like I'm hearing from you that may be worth pulling out and exploring a bit more.
Yeah.
The first one is around the word fair, which fair is it's a charged and subjective term, right? Like fair,
yes.
If we just throw the word fair out, then there's as many definitions as there are people reading the word. We have to clarify. And then the second thing that I feel like I'm hearing from you, which is probably worth exploring, is this idea that any given practice has a limited pool of cash available to allocate to wages. And once we've maximized, there literally is no more to give. And so that's part of your argument too. How about we start with that word fair and the subjectivity of it? Is that cool?
Yep.
I completely understand that. This is one of the challenges I think about like communication, especially on forums like that. And especially when we're sort of interacting on these forums with people that we don't know very well or don't really know at all, is that it's open for interpretation. And so it makes perfect sense to me that you would read a post like that and you would see the word fair without being provided a definition or a meaning. You might have your own interpretation. So if it's okay with you, then, Reese, I would love to ask you to define fair in this context. What does fair mean to you in the context of registered technician wages?
I think that's going to be a loaded question, but here we go. When we talk about fair, I think when we spoke about this before in the previous recording, we said, well, how do you define what fair looks like in your practice in terms of wages? We looked at what the sliding scale that we are seeing now in a geographic area and saying, okay, well, this is like the lowest end of the scale. So we're going to assume that's like a new grad to the end of the scale being very experienced. We don't know, well, I know for my practice, but I don't know what any other people do in terms of how they use their technicians to what they see value in. For us, I like to think that we use our team to their fullest extent of their skill level and utilize them effectively enough to generate production. Now, does anyone know what a technician generates in terms of production? I don't know. And I can tell you that we have just recently started to track that metric to see what that value is. So when we talk about what is the value of a technician, track it. Put a line item into your PIMS and find out what that actually looks like. Because until you find out what that looks like, you don't know the value of your technician. Okay? So if your technician is pulling in, $1,000 a day, I mean, it's making money for you. Do we then look at a provider percentage like we treat it as a doctor? Do we do that? Maybe. But until you have historical data, you can't have that right now. So right now, 95%, if not 98%, are stuck in this wage mentality, which is, again, fine, right? As long as we have a percentage allocated for it, just like we do for doctors. So we are trying something new for us. As I said, I just recently started to track the technician and production for our hospitals. I don't have enough data to tell you how that's going. I mean, it's going. I can see where it's going. I can see that one hospital is doing close to $2,000 for one hospital and a little bit less than one for another. But it's all about how we use them now and are they allowed to use them? So going back to what's fair, I think there can be many salary or production packages that we can tailor, but it has to be fair to the practice. And it comes down to what is affordable for that practice. Now, what is affordable for practice A may not be affordable for practice B, and that could be side by side. But it comes down to the efficiency, the skill level, their knowledge, the culture. It comes down to it as well, because it's all going to affect productivity. It's all going to affect efficiency, workflow. I don't know if I've answered your question. I feel like I've gone about it a roundabout way, but at the end of the day, fair, I think, is subjective to the individual practice. According to these tiers that I was just explaining, we can be creative, but we have to have data to support that creativity. I would love to see technicians getting paid $60 an hour. I absolutely would. But we have to sustain that model. And if we can find ways to do that, that's awesome. I just don't think we've found that way yet, because we're still stuck in the five categories of the 2020 COGS, support, doctors, payroll, profit. And we look at 20 as the profit. Some people do more, most people do less than 20. I don't know if we can actually put a sliding scale on what's fair other than geographical, this is the rate for technicians at this current moment. Do I think it's fair? No. For what they do, I don't. But it's what's sustainable.
I think that makes sense. So I'm going to try and reflect back some of the things that I've heard from you, and maybe we'll come to a final definition based on this. But correct me where I'm missing, okay? So what I'm hearing is that when you're trying to determine a fair wage for your technicians, there's 3 factors and then a 4th one that you might add in later with this current project. So let's start with the 3 factors, because that's historically what you've been doing. The first one is market research. You're looking at all of the practices in your area that are similar to yours, right? So if it's a small animal general practice that you run, then you're going to look at all the small animal general practices in the area. And you're trying to determine approximately what technicians make at those practices so that you can come up with an idea of what the typical technician wage is in your market. It goes into your algorithm. The second factor that goes into your algorithm is influenced by the third one, which is your target EBITDA or target profitability. And so you've set a target for your practice of, I think you said 20%. Is that right?
No, I didn't say that. I said that's the industry target.
Got it.
Not for me.
But so we don't have to discuss your exact target, but you have, I assume, which means that's why it's a direct influence to factor number 2, which is what percentage of gross am I willing to allocate to technicians, right? So if I'm going to have a technician team of, say, 10 and my gross is X, I'm going to take, say, 20%, whatever percentage that you decide to allocate. So those are the 3 factors. What is my target for profit, which leaves X number of dollars? What percentage of those dollars am I willing to allocate to technician wages? And then what is the typical wage in my area? Am I missing anything else that goes into that algorithm? Skill. You're going to have a range of wages based on the skill of the technicians on your team. Okay. Trying to get a little bit more clarity on how you're defining fair in your market. So when you look at the market research side and you're looking at the wages of comparable practices in your area, I'm going to imagine, Reese, that there is a range because of just the realities that you laid out. Different practices are run in different ways. They have different pricing profiles. They have different ways of scheduling appointments. And so you might have 2 practices that from the outside look exactly the same, but one's generating $3 million annual gross and one's generating $1.5 million annual gross. Obviously, their finances are different. So that means their wages are likely to be different. When you look at that range, how do you determine where you want to be?
Actually, it's not different because it's a sliding scale of percentage.
Right, but if the practices look the same, so I guess I should be clear. If we have 2 practices that have the same number of technicians, but one does twice the amount of gross, presumably those technicians are making more money. And so in your area, when you do this market research, do you see a range or are they very closely related wages for technicians?
There's a range, and it can range, and I'm telling you, we're in Vancouver, Canada, so it ranges as a starting of 28. And again, we are talking registered.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Registered CVT, LVT, whatever that credentialed.
Yep.
From 28, and you can go right up to 41.
Oh, that's a big range. So
it's a big range.
How do you know where you want to be in that range?
But out of that 41, we look at what Who's offering it? Is it corporate? Okay, great. Is it corporate and emergency? Is it overnights? Is it Sundays? What goes into the 41? And we have to ask these questions because while it's 41 on paper, what does 41 actually look like? Oh, you need to work Saturday and Sunday and it's overnight. Okay, well, of course you're going to be paying more, but we're not measuring apples with apples. And so this is what goes into that market research. Now, as you said, if I'm going to solely look at independent practices that are small GPs and Monday to Saturday, sure, but we have to factor into the same practices that are also owned by corporate. And because they too are going to be hiring VTs or registered technicians, it may not be emergency. We can move that out the equation because then they're a different market, and we can move out overnights because they're in a different market. So we need to make sure that we don't include the ERs and the overnights. But everything else, if they fall into the target market that we serve, you absolutely need to take that into consideration. Here's the next part that I don't think we talk enough about and maybe this is just me. When you find someone who's at the top end of that range that's in your same target market of serviceability and same hours and things like that, I ask myself, are they always looking for people? How often are they looking for people? Is it just a constant revolving door? Is that why they're trying to attract people? I feel like I kept my finger on the pulse enough to know who's who and who's doing what. And it's a small industry. So we know what practices are doing well and which are. So I can judge that myself. But from an outside point of view, I mean, I will be honest when I tell you this, is that I have a RVT registered credential technician that said, hey, this practice down the road, and literally is down the road, is offering me 45. And I said, you should take it. I wasn't going to compete with that because I can't afford 45.
No, I
said,
take
it.
I hear you.
I hope the culture's the same. I hope you thrive there. I hope they gave you more opportunities that I can give you. But you should take it if it's about the money.
Yeah.
I don't have ill feelings towards people that need more money. I don't feel that they should stay with me for loyalty. Loyalty goes a long way, but I just told you that there is a cap. If they can get above that cap, go for it. Have my blessing. I wish you well. I just know what I can and can't afford. And if they're willing to do that, I ask the question, how? How do they get that money to support it? I'm never going to discourage them from doing that.
Yeah. This is really helpful for me to hear. So, Reese, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, perhaps this is a bit of an oversimplification, but I'm thinking when it comes to veterinary technician wages, there are probably 3 camps of thought, okay? So stick with me for a second. One camp of thought is that fair to the business, right? Wage is fair for the business is what you get. Right? That's one camp of thought. Another camp of thought is fair to the technician. Whatever technician views as fair, that's what fair is. The third camp of thought is a mixed methods camp of thought, an attempt to balance what's fair to both. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that you're in the third camp. You're trying to balance, how can I maximize wage for the technicians that work for me, based on their value to the organization, their education, and their skill set, with what's fair to the business so that the business can remain healthy financially, right? So you're trying to balance those two things. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. Is that right?
Absolutely. But isn't that what business is trying to balance the best of all worlds?
See, here is the catch. Okay. That's it. I think that this makes sense to you and seems obvious to you because it's just the way you think. And so my guess is that when you saw Becky's post, my guess is that your brain interpreted fair as what's fair to the technician. And you were thinking, wait a second, we also have to think about what's fair to the business.
Of course.
I think that when Becky wrote the post, who she was speaking to are hospital owners who only think of what's fair to the business. And they exist. I think you'll agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's where the sort of miscommunication or misunderstanding occurred. We could ask her. I think that Becky was writing a post, and that line of it was really meant to be seen and heard by the hospital owners or corporate, financial number pushers, whoever it might be, by the people who are in charge of wages, who, for whatever reason, they function from a perspective of, I pay you what I feel is fair, take it or leave it. But you're not that person. You're the person who says, I'm going to try and do my best to balance what's fair to me and my business with what's fair to the people who work for me. Because I think that we need to try and balance those things, right? And so you interpreted her line as, you should only think of the technicians. And your gut response to that is like, whoa, the best way to run business is to think about what's healthy for the business and what's healthy for the people that make the business run. You're leaving an important part out. I think that's where the miscommunication happened. What do you think?
Potentially. And I think once I saw the post, of course, and then I saw some comments and it was leaning to one side.
Yes.
It's like, well, hang on, guys. We do need to think about the business as well. And don't get me wrong, I got some feedback, but some people don't realize or care that the business also needs to coexist. And that's where I try to educate that portion of, I 100% agree with you, but some things need to change in order to give you this incredible pay rate that you deserve.
Yeah.
But things need to change. And simply just saying that we need to be paid more isn't going to change it, except for changing things like health. Look, if you can just make health benefits part of like dentistry, oh man, we would be loving life, right? Of course, our prices might reflect true costs now, and everyone will actually get paid what they deserve. I fully believe the same goes for an assistant or a CSR and everybody else in our team. I don't think they're getting paid near enough, but it's only what the model can support. I'm trying, and I don't know if I'm going to ever succeed, to get my team to a certain benchmark. Can I pay my CSRs $35 an hour? Can I pay my technicians to up to $50? Can I do that? The only way that I physically can do that, Josh, is if three things happen. One, I reduce the amount of staff that I have and reallocate those funds to the people that are there. We become more efficient. That means maybe seeing more people in this small time frame. But am I burning the candle at both ends? Am I giving them more money but overworking them? I don't know the answer here, but I'd like to find a way to make it work. But that is vision right now that I'm still trying to work out myself.
Yeah. That sentence right there, Reese, is why I want to say what I'm about to say.
Okay,
The fact that you just said, I'm thinking about these things. I'm trying to find ways to make this vision work. I want to increase, I don't want to just pay people a living wage. I want to pay them an exceptional wage, right? Like the fact that you're thinking about that confirms for me that you're in that third camp of trying to balance both realities, which is very, very hard to do. It's just hard to do. You know that. That's why you're struggling with these things and thinking through these things. When I read Becky's post and then I read your comment, that is not what I expected to hear from you in this conversation. I mean, I'm just going to be completely candid with you. I'm admitting to something I'm not proud of here, but my immediate read of your comment was, he's the kind of business owner who's putting the business first. And what I'm hearing in this conversation is that's not actually who you are. You're the kind of business owner who tries to balance the business needs with the human needs. I think that's exceptional. I think that's great. There's not enough of you. We need more people like you in the industry. And my worry is that when people like you see a post like what Becky wrote and comment in the way that you commented, not everybody's willing to sit down and have this kind of conversation with you. And I wonder how many other people misinterpreted your intentions in the way that I did and didn't have the benefit of having this conversation.
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Well, of course, we don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate the words that you've said, especially coming from you, Josh. It means a lot more than the person down the road, to be fair and honest. But I genuinely believe that many practice owners want to be the same people.
Yeah.
They just don't know how. And to them, it is business is my livelihood. Business pays my bills. Business pays their bills. It's the business. And I don't know if everyone's thought about it, but when we have the retention of our team, it actually saves money. It saves about $55,000 per year in retention. That money can be reallocated, reinvested into our team. It drives efficiency. It does affect the bottom line because we look at opportunity costs. But at the end of the day, here is if we can make it a career rather than a job, I think that's where I would love for any position to be. And when I say career, can you say that a kennel assistant can be a career? Absolutely, if they move up the ranks to practice manager or technician or even go to vet school for that matter, it can be a career path, but they need the mentorship, they need the leadership, they need the belief that they can do that. Can people make a career if they just want to be, I don't want to say the word just, if they want to stay at a CSR or stay at an assistant? Once again, like everything, there's going to have its limitations. Is it okay? Of course it's okay. It's okay. It's just everyone has different goals in life. But if we want to move this practice, move our industry forward, we have to think differently. Mm-hmm. So you said to me, more people like you. I think there is. I just don't know if they understand how to move about it. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It's about taking intentionality and putting it into action so that intention becomes reality, right? There's often a gap with that. I also think it's about the way that we communicate and talk about these topics. These are charged topics, and they're becoming more and more charged over the years. Whether that's for good or not is a whole other debate, but it's the reality that there are a lot of technicians out there that have very, very strong feelings and opinions about the way that technicians are currently compensated. Not necessarily at a single practice like yours, but across the industry. There's a lot of technicians out there that have had pretty piss poor experiences. And there's a lot of technicians out there that, whether it was the intended message or not, their perception of the message has been, no, your wage is second to the business's financial health. And I think what we need to find is better ways to communicate that it's not a first and second, that they live in the same place. And we need to have more productive conversations about the financial realities of running a veterinary organization, the financial realities of the people who make the organization run, and how we can maximize both together so that we can build true business health. That's what business health is, right? Business health is a business that runs effectively, efficiently, at its peak performance, delivers on its mission effectively, and has people within it who thrive in their work. When those things kind of converge, you've got a healthy business. But too often, these little bites of conversation that we're having, I'm even reticent to call it conversation on social media, is just so misinterpreted and so misunderstood. We just need to find better ways to communicate these things, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? My communication skills aren't the best. It wasn't meant to be interpreted that way. I just wanted to ensure that we did still think about the business portion, which maybe I just assumed that it was only about the technician. I didn't dispute that's what you deserve. Deserve and fair were two different things in my book because I have to take into account fair for both parties.
Yeah.
Deserve is a different conversation.
Yep.
You deserve much more than you currently got. So, that's why I only singled out that word fair, because I agree with everything else.
No, I love it. Language matters, right? And so hopefully both you and I can walk away from this conversation with a little bit more thoughtful consideration of how we use language and how we communicate these things. And hopefully that results in more of these kinds of productive conversations among veterinary professionals, not just you and I in the future.
No, absolutely. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for having this candid conversation. I thank you for entertaining me on the social. I thank you for taking me up on my offer. I honestly did not think that I'd have you on here at all, and I'm just honored. Thank you so much.
You bet. As far as duels go, I don't think this was an entertaining one. But as far as conversations go, I think it was pretty good.
But we got the hook.
We got the hook, exactly. Reese, thank you for having me on.
No problem. Josh, where can people find you?
You can find Flourish at www.flourish.vet. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's how this whole thing started. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
And thanks for joining me on the Vet Story Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. If you want to come on the show to share your story or knowledge, email me, Rhys, RHYS, at ivmsolutions.org. This podcast is brought to you by IVMS, Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. If you're a private practice owner or manager and find that the wheels are spinning with little to no direction or profits, or even if your culture is struggling, give me a shout. This is exactly what I help practices fix. I even offer the only money-back guarantee that exists in our industry today. Practice ownership should not be this hard. Visit ivmsolutions.org to learn more. Until next time, take care.